That's funny. Wow. That book came out 10 years ago. And I think that's the first time anybody's asked me that question. That's great. So easy on the internet to see something and judge it in 5 seconds, good or bad. I think what literature teaches us is that there's a story underneath it every time, and that maybe we should be, looking for a little more nuance in the world.
Ciao, io sono Ilenia Zodiaco e sono qui al Festival Letteratura di Mantova con Nathan Hill, una delle voci della narrativa americana più importanti non soltanto per la critica ma anche per i lettori. È in libreria con Rizzoli, con il suo romanzo di debutto Il Mix, e con Wellness, la sua ultima creazione letteraria. Hi Nathan, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for reading the book and meeting me here.
Shall we?
We shall.
Wellness, your last novel, is all about the placebo effect. In fact, at one point you write, a story can be as powerful as a medicine.
Mm-hmm.
In this context where people don't believe in anything, don't believe in science anymore, they only believe their gut feeling, what is the importance of telling the right story, the truthful stories?
The sense I had when I was writing this book is that our world is made up of the stories that we tell about it. Our world is defined by what stories we believe, and so in that context, it's as important to understand the stories that are coming into your brain as the foods and drugs that are going into your body. It's that important. And I was writing this novel at a time when there was a sort of explosion of fake stories, on the internet. I was writing it during the pandemic, and there was a sense at that time like you just couldn't trust what you were seeing online. You didn't know if people were telling you the truth, and misinformation, disinformation, and it just struck me that I was friends with people who were just living in a completely different universe from me because we believed in different stories. And so I just got to thinking why not write a story about the stories that we believe in? And in my novels, I like to take a central idea and then fragment it and look at it from a lot of different ways. And placebo was one of those ways. It was the very definition of believing something fake, but it having real world consequences. In this case, real physical consequences in your body. So it just seemed like a nice angle, one of many, to kind of tell that larger story.
Yeah, with AI now, it's even worse.
Yeah. It's gotten much worse. Even since the book's come out, it's gotten much worse.
Exactly. Another novel you will talk
Right, that's the next one.
So we live in a media ecosystem where we have access to an ocean of information and data, but as it is obvious reading your books, that doesn't imply meaning. Maybe that's why every character in your novel seeks their own story in which they can believe, and it becomes their entire reality. It seems that you want to reveal this mechanism of self-persuasion and self-illusion that even the most rational character, by the way, Wellness, for instance, Elizabeth, uses. Nobody's safe. Everyone is self-delusional. In your opinion, can literature be an antidote for this kind of fragmentation, of reality's fragmentation?
Well, I mean, it would be pretty self-serving for me to say yes because I write it, So, but I do believe in literature as a mechanism for one to interrogate yourself. I don't know if it will reveal some kind of deep inner truth, but it reveals a way that you can think about yourself and think about other people that's more than just kind of the surface level that we kind of instinctually do. I don't know, like the characters in the novel are experiencing different forms of delusion. Jack is a victim of misinformation. He's believing fitness bros online who are giving him just bad advice. His father is a victim of disinformation, where he's believing in stories by people who are trying to harm him. But then Elizabeth is a victim of what you might call information overload, that she has so much true information that she kind of doesn't know what to do with it yet. And these are all different kinds of problems that we all face. I mean, we all have in our pockets a fire hose of information, true or not. And part of the modern condition is being critical about all of that. And I hope that literature is the experience of reading a lot of literature teaches one's brain to be able to slow down enough to be critical about the stories that you encounter elsewhere.
Yeah, certainly literature can help you raise some questions about yourself. So exercising doubt can be helpful.
Yeah, and also understanding that everybody has another story underneath the story that you see. It's so easy on the internet to see something and judge it in 5 seconds, good or bad, and that's now the truth. And I think what literature teaches us is that there's a story underneath it every time, and that maybe we should be, looking for a little more nuance in the world before we make those judgments.
Absolutely. Well, your protagonist, both in the Nyx and in Wellness, suffer from anxiety or some sort of panic. Even if in the modern time we are free from physical menaces, we are overwhelmed by insecurities and overthinking. For instance, Jack and Samuel have this constant urge to perform the better version of themselves because they feel the judgment of other people. They feel inadequate, insecure. Did you choose these themes also because looking around they seemed more urgent for you, more widespread than in the past?
Yeah, with Samuel, with my first book, that was a very personal choice because, at that time when I was writing that book, I told everybody that I was going to be a novelist, and then I studied to be a novelist, and then for years I was not a novelist, And so it was a lot, like many years of failure that then I created that character of Samuel, who was himself a failed writer, and I sort of poured a lot of my anxiety into that. With Wellness, it was a little different. In Wellness, it's really about the sort of performative nature of seeing other people as they curate their lives on Facebook or Instagram or on TikTok, and you're only seeing these highlights, and then there's also that creeping sense that you're living life wrong. I don't know what it's like here. I know back home when I look at my phone, my news feed is all about all the ways I'm living incorrectly. Like I'm not eating enough protein, or I'm not getting enough steps, or I'm not sleeping correctly, or showering correctly, or whatever it is. I'm sitting too much at my desk. There's always this sense that like you're a one or two life hacks away from living a better life. And it's a very American urge, I think, to try to like do it perfectly, and that in itself can lead to a lot of anxiety because nobody can do it perfectly, and we're all screwing up all the time. And I want my characters to kind of celebrate that, but they have to go through the gauntlet of the story before they can.
Of course. In Wellness, you describe the struggles of a long-term couple living in a rapidly changing world where even relationships have become more fluid. And one of the things Jack and Elizabeth struggle with is the fact that their love story is no longer the same, that they have changed. And you brilliantly connect the story of their marriage with the story of Chicago, of their city and the neighborhoods, because of course the environment we live in doesn't remain the same. As we change, the environment change as well. Why do we as human beings have such a hard time accepting changes? Because in your books there is also a kind of obsession with the true self, the real true self. But does this true self really exist, or are we in a constant flux?
I think we're in a constant flux. And there's a line from my first novel where near the end of the book, Faye, one of my main characters, realizes that the quest for your one true self obscures the fact that you have many true selves, and sometimes one true one can hide all the other ones, and I think that's true for Jack and Elizabeth too. But I wanted to give them this very powerful love story. I wanted Romeo and Juliet at the beginning, and then the rest of the book is essentially like, what if Romeo and Juliet hadn't died at the end? Like, what if they moved to Mantova and like and raised a family, and suddenly maybe Jack's a bad father, maybe Juliet doesn't like her job, and they'd be like, we're Romeo and Juliet, what's wrong? Like sometimes your origin story, or maybe it's nostalgia, or maybe whatever it is, that like thing in the past that you're clinging to needs to be overcome for you to realize how the world has
Yes.
changed, how you have changed. So yeah, that's why you're exactly right. That's why I set the story in a particular neighborhood in Chicago that has experienced gentrification over the last 20 years, because just like a neighborhood, I feel like a person or a couple changes bit by bit over time. And if you're not kind of present for that, if you're not aware of it, suddenly everything can seem different, and people can rebel against that.
Yes, absolutely. We are obsessed with this origin idea. Regarding romanticism and idealism, the things you love the most will one day hurt you the worst. And again, in Norwegian, gift means marriage, but also poison.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a romantic person?
After that line, it probably sounds like a no, but I do, but I don't. I kind of don't believe in like the romantic ideal that, it's. I don't believe in like, the Disney movie, the happily ever after. I think people need to be aware of how we're all imperfect, and part of love is learning to love other people's imperfections. I have many of them, and my wife forgives them. So that's really lovely. So I'm not a romantic in that sense, but I am in that I do believe love, marriage. It's like I have a good one, I really like it. So I recommend it.
Well, guilt is one of the main drivers for Samuel and other characters in your works. In particular, in the Nyx, there is this shapeshifter creature, the Nyx, from Norwegian mythology that owns people like a ghost. Can we say that the Nyx could be a metaphor for guilt? And I'm curious to know which shape the Nyx would take if it came for you.
Oh, boy. That's funny. Wow. That book came out 10 years ago, and I think that's the first time anybody's asked me that question. That's great. What a cool question. I think you're right. I think it has to do with with guilt or with shame or regret or whatever it is that is kind of that powerful thing in the past that you're trying to put away. I think that those things that we as a famous psychiatrist once said, those things that we try to hide are the things that end up controlling us. As for what it would appear to me, oh boy, well, it would be, it would probably be like all of those like childhood ideas, and by childhood I mean all the way up until my teens and 20s, about who I thought I was supposed to be. Like I really thought I was supposed to be, living in New York City, living this like fantastically exciting life of a writer, and having parties and knowing all the famous people. Like I thought that that's what I wanted, and every time I've gotten close to that life, I've just been like, that's not at all what I want. It's like I live in a very quiet, sleepy town near the beach. And with in a town with zero other writers, and it suits me, but like coming to grips with like who you think you want to be and then who you actually are. I think it takes a while, and that's like the project of growing up. So my Nyx would probably just be myself at 20 years old going, what the hell is wrong with you?
Well, it's funny because one of my favorite sentences of all the time is careful what you wish for. My answer to that, which shape the Nyx will take, it will be the same, like a more successful version of myself that I somehow betrayed to become someone else.
Yes, so, exactly.
It's a common feeling. Well, I've noticed that politics plays a major role in your works. And nowadays, unfortunately, when we talk about politics, we often talk about rage and fanaticism. Those feelings, of course, are amplified by social media and the news system. In wellness, all of this is interconnected. How the story we come to believe define our reality, how algorithms reinforce those beliefs until they become somehow a religion. So it looks like there is a strong connection between distrust, faith, and capitalism, especially digital capitalism. How did you manage all these complex matters in your books?
That's why they take so long to write. That's I feel like we have I don't. In English, the word is parasocial. I don't know what the translation would be, but we have
It's the same parasociale.
we have these parasocial relationships with information, with political figures, with political issues. You know, we're bombarded by so much information all the time that we sort of live in this world where you know, like we have a weird mental relationship with the president, you know, that happens in our minds, or with this issue or that issue, whatever it might be. And so in my books, I want to try to bring that feeling into the books. You know, that's why, for example, wellness has, you know, so much research in it because, and you know, I'm citing so many ideas of many other authors and many other researchers. It's because, you know, we read a book and then we tell our friends about that book at a party, and then a year later we realize we have adopted the same idea as that book, and now we claim it as our own. You know, it's like that we have these relationships with politics, with ideas, and so that's what I'm really trying to do, is to try to dramatize that feeling of like we adopt all these ideas along the way, and some of them are sort of ours, and some of them are sort of not, and it's that quality that I'm trying to get at.
Italian readers might not know that the first draft of the Nix were lost because your laptop was stolen in New York City, forcing you to start over. First of all, how did you manage to keep your cool? And secondly, can you tell us if there are significant differences between the original version and the novel that you have to rewrite, basically? Because I guess you didn't know by heart the entire draft.
No, I didn't, and it changed radically. I mean, the story is unrecognizable because one of the things that I did when I tried to, you know, cope with that loss was a friend of mine who at that time was living in San Francisco. I was living in New York, and he told me to start playing this one video game. And I didn't know it at the time. He's since told me that it was just, you play this game, you play it with your friend, and you can kind of chat with them. And he was just worried about me. He knew I was depressed after losing the manuscript, and so we would play this video game together. And then I just got really into it. I was obsessed with this game for a little while, and eventually he was like, "I can't play it this much," and he went away, and I just kept on going. And then that experience of like denying one's sadness by pouring yourself into this fake world became the basis for a big plot in the Nix, where Samuel is playing obsessively this video game, and then he meets this guy named Ponage, who is even more addicted than he is, and Ponage sort of represents the endpoint, like where that life could take him, you know, and so the novel changed radically because I took all of those experiences and put them into the novel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what is even more relevant than the past, I think that the video games world now, it's somehow very similar to social media addiction. So that kind of feeling of avoid real life to live in this fantasy world. Yeah. It looks very similar.
It does. And I'm also quite sympathetic to it. You know, people say I write satire, and I suppose I do, but a lot of satire leaves me feeling cold because I feel like satirists are just simply making fun of people, and like the people I'm making fun of also have a lot of love for and a lot of sympathy for. So like, you know, like video game addiction is it's easy to poke at, but at the same time, you know, I feel sympathy for people who feel like in my life I don't feel victories, but in this game I can feel important in this game, and everybody wants to feel important in their lives, you know. And so if you go to a video game to find that, you know, I have a lot of sympathy for that, you know. So
yeah, it's a very compassionate approach. It's not like you loser. Yeah. It's not like that.
I don't want to do that. Yeah.
No. It is treated like an addiction. So it makes perfectly sense. So Jack and Elizabeth are in their 40s, and they are navigating the absurdities of modern life, including the tech obsession for health and the challenges of parenthood. While they are trying to be good parents, ironically, they can't stop thinking about their parents and how they failed them, or on the opposite, how their parents failed them. you can stop being a son or a daughter even if you became a parent after all. Is there a link, in your opinion, between the fact that as a society we have this kind of obsession for youth and the reluctance to mature? It seems that millennials especially can't get old or look old, but at the same time they can't mature either. So are we stuck in an eternal adolescence?
The internet might be like it's forever churn, but yeah, I don't know. I think with Jack and Elizabeth, it's less about denying their adolescence and much more about there's a kind of an American myth that you can grow up and leave home and become whoever you want to be. You can reinvent yourself. And that's a really important part of our identity. But there's a shadow side of that, which is if you forget everything where you came from, if you deny it, then the person that you think you've reinvented yourself into can be quite a performance, quite fake. It's like The Great Gatsby, and so that's kind of what I'm getting at with Jack and Elizabeth is that they came to Chicago to become orphans, and so now they're trying to parent without really dealing with the stuff that happened to them when they were kids. And like I said earlier, the stuff that you try to deny ends up controlling you. So I think for me, it's less about an obsession with adolescence or youth or something like that, and much more about the pieces of ourselves that we put away from our adolescence that then kind of come back unexpectedly later.
Yeah, there is a great sentence from Philip Roth, American Pastoral, which say that you can start over. All this myth about starting over, it's impossible because, of course, our past haunts us.
Yeah, that's right. He probably said it better than I did.
Well, the concept of wellness is pivotal in your last novel, but it also addressed with a nuanced approach, sometimes satirical, sometimes dramatic. So I wonder what wellness means for you.
Oh, well, it's so funny. Like when I was growing up, wellness, we didn't really use that word. It was called health back then. And it just meant going to the doctor once a year for your checkup and making sure everything was fine. And now wellness has evolved into this whole thing where it's
a job.
Yeah, it is. It's about about toxin avoidance and exercise and making strong connections in your community and mindfulness and yoga and like standing up every half hour to make sure you're not sitting too much and on and on and on. And it becomes actually weirdly quite stressful. And it's almost as if you need wellness products to relieve the stress that the wellness imperative creates in the first place, So I don't buy into it at all. Most of the actually good research out there is just like move your body every once in a while and don't eat a bunch of crap. And like that's about the best you can do. Everything else is chance. But I feel like there's this feeling of this desire for control and certainty. I think people are like, well, I don't know what the future brings, but if I go on the keto diet, maybe I'll be okay, and then there's this like a deep psychological need to feel like I'm going to be okay in a world where not everybody's okay. And yeah, so it's seductive, and the people who sell it on Instagram look fabulous doing it. So it's very easy to fall into it, but I try to be rational, calm, relaxed about it. Exercise a little bit and try to get enough sleep, and that's good.
Absolutely, the rest is a little magical thinking.
Yeah, right.
What was the research process like for wellness? Because reading about Elizabeth, I guess you focus on behavioral psychology. And do you think that what you learn is going to be useful for other novels in the future? And this is a subtle question to ask if are you working on something new right now?
The research process was very organic. I would find a study that I was interested in. I would read the study, and then I would look at the end notes and see what studies that study cited. And then you can also search to see what studies in the future cited that one. And so my research was very, very organic, very messy, very like it would just spider web out from points of interest, and fortunately I was writing a novel. I wasn't writing a dissertation, so I didn't have any responsibility to be thorough. I could just read what was really fascinating to me, and so that's how I did it. And yeah, eventually I felt like I really got into Elizabeth's headspace, because she would be reading all of these things too. And there's one chapter in wellness where I bring in all that research into the actual chapter. And I did that because I was reading so much that all of those in-text citations started to feel natural to me. And it's just like, oh, of course, this is how she would be feeling too. So that's how I did it. As for how useful it's going to be for future novels, I don't know. Honestly, all of that research is now in a box in my closet, and I am working on a new novel, but it's completely new, completely different. It has some new themes, and so I'm starting the research project anew, and it's going to be diving into some new stuff, but it's still early days.
Well, we can't wait.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Nathan. Hopefully you will enjoy Mantova as we do. And lovely interview. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you. Thanks so much.